enemy, one of the main things I would want to do is devalue the significance of some of the most important and powerful weapons that I know you had in your arsenal against me. One of them is worship. Carrie said it earlier. I would want to devalue worship. I would want you to save it for the end of the day when you really don't have any time or energy left. I would want prayer to be the last thing on your to-do list so that you'll nestle yourself in bed at the end of the night hoping to spend some time with God, but really you can barely keep your eyes open because you've just saved the last bits of energy in your day for prayer. That's what I'd want if I were your enemy. But no, I wouldn't want you to have a war room. I wouldn't want you to have strategies. I wouldn't want you to have intentional prayer. I wouldn't want you to have promises of God that are significant to the areas of our life where we see fingerprints of the enemy's handiwork. I wouldn't want you to be praying according to the promises of God, because if you get serious enough about prayer, the enemy doesn't stand a chance, and he knows it. But the Apostle Paul says, not only do you need to pray, but there are a couple pieces of armor that I just want to highlight to you that I think are going to send us out of here with victory in our path. He says in verse 14, having girded your loins with truth. Somebody say truth. He says you need to gird yourself first of all and foremost with truth. In the first century, Roman soldiers were everywhere. The regular Jewish civilian would see Roman soldiers everywhere, walking the streets, in the store, the places of economy. They would see them everywhere. And so the uniform that a Roman soldier would wear would not be something that would be foreign to them. They would know it specifically. Paul was in prison when he wrote this letter. I want you just for a moment to picture the possibility of Paul sitting there in his prison cell, which would have been house arrest when he wrote the epistle, the letter of Ephesians. He is on house arrest. I want you to picture him sitting there on that floor with that parchment paper spread out in front of him, ink quill in hand, beads of sweat pouring down his brow as he tries to write this letter to the first century church at Ephesus. And I want you to picture him as he's trying to figure out what is the best way for me to describe this first piece of armor that has to be in place if these believers are going to have any chance of standing firm against the schemes of the enemy. And as he tries to figure out what piece of armor would most dictate the importance of truth, I want you to picture the possibility of him looking up from his parchment paper and seeing that Roman guard standing guard right outside of the door of that room where Paul would have been. And he would have at first seen that big, brilliant broadsword that every soldier carried 3 to 4 feet long. He would have also seen that smaller 18-inch dagger that would become the sword of the Spirit. He would see that breastplate that was the majority of the uniform that the Roman soldier wore. He would see that big helmet that the Roman soldier had on most of the time with tall feathers on the top so that people could see them coming from afar off. He would have seen all that more flashy, more obvious pieces of armor that the Roman soldier was wearing. But when he thought about truth, he didn't pick the flashy, he didn't pick the obvious, he didn't pick what would be most easily noticeable from other people. He knew that underneath all of that was a belt. And when he thought about which piece applies to truth, he didn't pick the sword, he didn't pick the shield, he didn't pick the helmet, he picked that inconspicuous belt. Because of all of the pieces that the Roman soldier would put on, the belt came first. If you want any chance, if I want any chance of standing firm against the schemes of the enemy, we have to make a decision about being women of truth first. Primarily, our focus has to be to be women that plant our feet solidly on the promises of God, on the truth of God as declared by His Word. We have to determine that we will not be swayed by the ways of this culture, that we will not lean to political correctness, but that we will decide, as for me and my house, what we're going to do is serve the Lord. That we're going to decide that truth will be the directive for our life. Truth is God's opinion on any matter. That's the simple definition. It's God's opinion. There are two opinions to every issue: God's opinion and everybody else's. And everybody else is wrong. And you have got to decide, am I going to be the popular mother in the PTA, or am I going to be the one that stands for truth? You've got to decide, am I going to be the popular woman in my group of friends that are trying to decide whether to date or not date, whether to date like this or not do it this way? You've got to decide, do I want to be popular, or do I want to be a woman who has the favor of God on her life because I'm standing on truth as written in this book right here? You've got to decide not whether or not you're going to fit comfortably in with society, but whether or not you're going to be a woman who decides that this book and the truths and the principles in it are going to govern your life, which means to be girded in truth. To be a woman who is girded in truth does not mean that you go to church on Sunday. Oh, I hope you do, but that doesn't mean you're girded in truth. It doesn't mean that you're in Bible study on every Tuesday night. I hope you are, but that doesn't mean that you're girded in truth. I hope that you are fellowshipping with other believers, but you can do all of that more obvious, more conspicuous, more noticeable things. You can wear the t-shirt, and you and I can have the bumper sticker on our car. We can do all the flashy things that say we believe in truth, but only you know whether or not you've decided this is the compass for my life. That I will not lean to my own understanding, that I will allow the truths of God, the opinion of God, to be the directive of my life. There is no hope of standing firm against the schemes of the enemy unless you and I have decided to be women girded in truth. Y'all, let me tell you why. Are y'all listening? Everybody okay? Listen, I know it's the end of the day. Hang in there, okay? Hang in there. Okay. Listen. This is the reason why this matters, this issue of truth. The enemy has a calling card. It's how you can know that something has the enemy's fingerprints on it from a mile away. His calling card is deception. Deception. Let me tell you what's so scary about deception, okay? This is what's scary about it. When you are being deceived, you don't know it. Deception is so scary because embedded within deception seems to be a blinding agent, so that the person that is being deceived has absolutely no idea that they are. They are standing on the edge of a cliff. They are about to take a step, and everybody around them can see, oh my goodness, if she takes that step in that direction, she's going to plummet into despair. But for some reason, the person standing on the edge can't tell. Oh, you've had that happen before. You know of a friend of yours that has been trying to explain to you why this relationship they're about to get in is worth leaving their family for, that it makes complete sense to them, that it's going to be healthy for them, that it's going to make the most sense in the long run for her and for her family, and it just seems completely rational. And while that friend of yours is trying to tell you why that makes sense, your eyebrow continues to lift in more and more confusion, because you can't figure out how they can't see that they are being deceived. Oh, you've had it happen before, that your teenager tried to tell you why they know what's best for their life. And your 15-year-old is trying to explain to you why it's best for her or him to make this choice for his or her future. And there you stand in your 40s or in your 50s or in your 60s looking at your daughter thinking, girl, you don't even know. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And the truth is, we don't even have to look to another person. Because the truth is, most of us, the vast majority of us in this room, could just look at ourselves. Because y'all, I got to tell you, there is a whole season of my life that I look back on In my early 20s, I look back on that season of my life, and I don't even know who that crazy person was back there. That person who allowed those kinds of relationships and who stepped into those kinds of influences and who walked down those kind of paths and who thought those kind of thoughts. I can't even believe that that was me. Anybody grateful for the delivering power of God? Oh, I'm grateful. And sometimes it's not until you stand away from it in hindsight that you look back and see that the grace and the mercy of God brought you out of that foolishness. Sometimes you can't see it while you're in it because deception blinds you. And I know that in a group this size, there are some of you right now who are reeling from the consequences of having been deceived. That right now you are sitting in consequences that you will have to deal with for this year, or maybe for 5 years, or maybe for a lifetime because of a choice you made in a season of deception. And your heart hurts because now you look back and you realize that the enemy was taking you for a ride. And you did not know it then. He did not tell you that contract that had all of those incredible benefits spelled out for you, that you signed your name to. He forgot to show you all the fine print. All of those warnings, you know those commercials that they have where they tell you, oh, you have a headache, so you need this particular medication. So if you take it, it's going to take your headache away. Now, you might experience temporary blindness, and you might not be able to use your left arm, and you might not wake up tomorrow morning, but your headache will be gone. All of those warnings, all of those things that will happen if you take this medicine. See, the enemy doesn't want to tell you all that. He just wants to tell you how good this is going to be. And he makes sure that you are blinded to all the after effects, the side effects to following him down that road. And then before we know it, we have been deceived. That's why, if we want any chance at standing firm against the schemes of the enemy, we must be women, before we walk out of these doors today, that have made a decision. As for me and my house, we're going to use this as the compass right here.